welcome back, students, to this second lesson in Science 24, Unit C on disease defense. This is about chlorination, sanitation, diet, and social conditions. So it says here we're going to trace from a historical perspective, look a little bit at history, the connection between diseases and contaminated drinking water, air pollution, personal hygiene. I'm going to focus on the drinking water. Describe in general terms how diseases may arise from an interaction of variables like poor nutrition, pathogens, environment. And we're also going to look at the relationship between social conditions and disease. Okay, moving on. So let's go back in time to the Egyptians. They pulled some of their drinking water out of the Nile River. But, of course, because it's a river and there's animals decaying in there and all kinds of germs, we have bacteria in the water. And so that was not healthy. One thing that they used was these crystals that they'd crush into powder. And they would it's called alum. They'd put that in the water. And alum would attract to some dirt and it would pull the dirt out of the water. So it would clean it a little bit, but it wouldn't get rid of bacteria. Okay, now we come along to the Greeks. This guy's name is Hippocrates. He used a cloth, here it is here, to strain the water and after some boiling, and the straining would pull out some of the dirt and the sediments. The sleeve was called the Hippocratic sleeve eventually. Here it looks like there's a bunch of sleeves in a contraption. Okay, also one styling dude, check out that beard. Now he's bald, I'm bald. I wonder if I should grow a beard like that. What do you think, guys? Okay, then we come to the Renaissance, and this guy, Leeuwenhoek, he invented the microscope. And because he did that, he proved that there was other things living in water, bacteria. And he, in fact, started a branch of science where we study what is inside water. So here is the microscope he invented. Now, you might not realize that thing is tiny. Look at that. And what you would do is you would hold it up to your face like that and look through it. And so anyway, that's the first microscope. Okay, and then we come to the Crimean War. That's 1853. People didn't recognize, even still, the importance of clean water and sanitation. So there's this nurse. Her name's Florence Nightingale, and she demonstrated quite a few things. But if you didn't have good drainage, if you had bad water, overcrowding, poor ventilation, that's what would cause high death rates. So these soldiers would come in, they weren't in a good, quote, hospital. It was dirty, it was crowded, it wasn't ventilated, and they were dying. She proved that if you changed those conditions, way less people died. So here she is, and notice that. We'll talk about that in a second. And look at the number of patients she's got. So she was called the Lady with the Lamp. So she is a ministering angel without any exaggeration in these hospitals. And as her slender form glides quietly along each corridor, every poor fellow's face softens with gratitude at the sight of her. When all the medical officers have retired for the night, and silence and darkness has settled down upon those miles of prostrate sick, she may be observed alone with a little lamp in her hand, making her solitary rounds. So she was obviously an excellent nurse. And so I put this in here as a tribute to the medical staff in our hospitals and in our care facilities that are protecting us against COVID-19. So that's my tribute to them. Okay, in 1854, there was an outbreak of cholera in London. And this guy, Dr. John Snow, he began to study the disease. Now, cholera is caused by a bacteria, leads to diarrhea, that can lead to dehydration and even death. Before Snow, it was believed that cholera was transmitted in the air. But Snow discovered the cause was actually dirty water. And in this particular case, it was from one water pump in the city. This pump right here. So he used statistics to try to find out the source of this contamination. And he used this map. Now you can see this map here. I'll just show you what he did. This is kind of cool. So there's the pump. It's still, as a tribute to him, it's still there on the street. So here's the pump here. And here's what he did. He started plotting where people lived that got sick. And the way he did that is he just did these little bars. He just would put a bar. Now you can see in this area here, he's got a pretty high concentration. So all the people in this block, of course, go to that pump for water. And in the nearby blocks, that's their water pump, right? Well, if that thing's contaminated, that's why they're getting sick. And so he could find, if you look at this next map, so here's the pump right here. So you can see that this is the area where most of the outbreak occurs. And so he's like, something is going on in this area, because out here, there's not many people that have it. Okay, so that's kind of cool. Mapping. Okay, and then permanent water chlorination began in 1905. So once again, there was some contaminated water, again in England, in this town here, Lincoln, and typhoid fever broke out, and that's caused by a type of salmonella bacteria. There's more than one type of salmonella. So Alexander Houston, he used basically chlorine. Now there was a process there. Chlorine gas was dissolved in lime, and anyway, but chlorination of the water helped stop it. Now this guy here, he wrote this book. I've read this book. He says chlorination is probably the most important public health measure in the history of the world, because when this started, now you have clean water. Wherever you can do this in the world, you've got clean water. If you go to YouTube, there will be a link on the assignment page. If you go look at dirty water under a microscope and clean water under a microscope on YouTube, you can see the difference. You can see what our clean water looks like today compared to just pond water. Okay? All right. Okay, so now, in order for us to be healthy, we have to have a good diet. So we need, and a good diet is what we call a balanced diet. So a balanced diet means in Canada, we have the Canada Food Guide. So this is a picture right off that page, and I'll put a link to there on the assignment as well. Notice this plate. Look at this. Half of the plate is fruits and vegetables. Quarter of the plate is protein, and a quarter of the plate is whole grain foods. And then make water your drink of choice. So ask yourself what your diet is like compared to what the Canada Food Guide. I know during volleyball season when I'm coaching, I stop at McDonald's and my plate doesn't really look like that. It looks like fries and a burger and a pop. So a healthy diet helps prevent certain types of diseases. For example, we all know cancer, and tobacco is linked to cancer, of course. Number one cause of cancer. But dietary factors contribute to some types of cancer. Another issue is obesity. If you increase your physical activity, you can decrease obesity. Plus, if you reduce intakes of foods that are high in fat and sugar, you can prevent unhealthy weight gain. Cardiovascular disease, heart disease. To a great extent, these are caused by unbalanced diets and a low amount of physical activity. Okay, so we know that we're saying that diets affect heart disease. So it says here, heart disease and stroke. Heart disease can be reduced by eating less saturated fats, okay, and trans fats. You could also eat sufficient amounts of unsaturated fats and fruits and vegetables. Okay, so you're probably asking yourself right now, yeah, Mr. Gibbings, well, what is a saturated fat? And what's in unsaturated fat? Well, I don't want to tell you that right now. That's what one of the assignments is going to be, is I want you to look that up, okay? All right, and then moving on to the last part of this page. If you eat less salt, that reduces blood pressure, which is part of heart disease. Also, if you increase physical activity, you can control your weight, and that will help prevent heart disease. Okay, now the curriculum calls for talking about social conditions and disease defense. So social conditions, what does that mean? Well, that means like education, wealth, infrastructure, like buildings, roads, electricity coming to the houses and the buildings. In general, just speaking kind of globally, generally, places that have higher social conditions, so better education, more wealth, more buildings and roads and hospitals and clinics, are linked to better health conditions. So let's take a look at some examples. So let's take a look at smoking. So smoking rates started declining in the 1950s and 60s when people became more educated that smoking was linked to lung cancer. So as people realized that smoking causes cancer, as they started educating children in schools about that, then lung cancer rates started going down. Heart disease started declining, same thing, when we became more educated about what caused heart disease, like with high cholesterol levels. Heart disease also began declining when these things, statins, which is medication, expensive medication that lowers cholesterol. When statins were created, heart disease started going down. But that only happened in populations that could afford the medication. So there's wealth, right? Places that could afford it were better off than places that couldn't afford it. Okay, so there's a little bit about social conditions. So take a look. In Canada, we have hospitals. We have a healthcare system. So, for example, everybody in Alberta has a healthcare card. You show that at the clinic and the hospital when you go. Okay, and you can go get treatments. So we can just go to the clinic and go to the emergency room. Now, sometimes we have to pay a little extra, but we're not truly paying the full cost. The government is kicking in a bunch of money for that. So compared to third world countries, Albertans are healthier than other places because we have hospitals, we have infrastructure, we have money, and all of those things. So social conditions lead to increased health. Okay. All right, so that's it for that lesson. There's a little assignment to do, and we'll see you for lesson 3.